Welcome to Black Sheep.
Hi there, I'm Nancy from Black Sheep Knitting in Needham, Massachusetts. We do this podcast once a week for the most part, and I always try to give out little tidbits of knowledge of my knitting experience. And today I have one that I'm going to talk about mistakes, because this has been my week of absolute mistakes. And speaking of mistakes, people use the backward loop cast on for casting on when you are picking up the stitches for the sleeves. You are often asked to do a backward loop cast on. And there are lots of other times when they're used. So the typical backward loop cast on is to wrap the yarn around your finger or around your thumb and do this. But when you do that, first of all, you're not making the bottom is not so stable, or I don't know how you would call it, but if you knit a bunch of those stitches, suppose you had to cast on for a sleeve, if you were knitting something across and you had to cast on for a sleeve. If you do a bunch of those and then you start knitting them, you end up with this gaping piece of yarn in between your stitches. Well, there's a way to prevent that. Normally, if you're told to do a backward loop cast on, you do this and put it on your needle. And like so. But, oops, I went over there. The better way to do it is to wrap it once and then hold the bottom of your yarn and give it a second twist. And I'll show you the difference in those. So you hold on to, so I've taken my middle finger and my index finger, I have it holding onto it tightly, and I twist my finger around. And I twist and put it on. So if you can see, the first ones I did, it's not a very substantial bottom to those cast on stitches, whereas this is, and you won't end up with that gaping piece of yarn between what you cast on and when you go to knit it. As you go to knit those stitches, if they're done with this simple E-wrap, you'll end up, in between your stitches, you end up with a big, long, looping piece of yarn. So that's the way I would not do it. This is the way I would do it. So I would give it a second twist, thereby securing the yarn so it doesn't come loose and cause that long piece of yarn in between your stitches. So again, you hold on to the bottom of the yarn and you twist. So can you see how it's more substantial there? I think that is much more effective. So that's what I would do if I'm told to do a backward loop cast on. So I know you've all experienced weeks where you just like to throw in the towel on knitting. And I had one of those weeks. I don't know what was in the air, what my problem was, but everything I did was wrong and I kept ripping things out. So starting with, which I've shown all of you, the plain Yoke Tee. And I'm doing the plain Yoke Tee 20. There is a plain Yoke Tee 22. What those numbers refer to is the gauge. So the plain Yoke Tee 22 is for a 5.5 stitch per inch gauge. And the plain Yoke Tee 20 is for a 5 stitch per inch, which is what I'm doing. And so I was knitting merrily along, and I had split for the sleeves, and I had the sleeves on holders, and then I tried it on. Well, I went too far. I normally, I don't know why I didn't do this, but I normally put my pattern in a plastic sleeve and I use tape, the colored tape, which I don't see any right here, but you've seen the transparent tape. I use that to go down my rows so that I don't make a mistake. Well, I was knitting merrily along, and I don't know what I did, but I obviously went too far with my increases. This is the tape, the transparent tape. We sell it in the shop, and I really recommend it. Actually, I have it here on my other mistake, but you can see, I'll only show this quickly because I don't want anybody to copy the chart, but to go to mark the rows you've done, and as you do it, you move the tape down. Well, somehow I didn't do this on this particular sweater. So when I did my try on, the back was enormous. And I went and counted my stitches and I was way off. So I ripped it back and I started again, still made similar mistakes. And so finally, and I've done this like several times and I think I'm still off on my count. But what I decided to do, you know how you count something and then you count it again and you count it again. So I decided to get these little markers that are different from the markers that I use. And these are going to be my counting markers. So that when I count, I'll put in a marker different from what I have so I don't confuse myself. So I'll only use these particular locking markers for counting. So I've been doing, so I counted 50 stitches. So I had 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, and now here I have 41, so that's 291. So I'm wrong again. So I'm going to have to go back, and I think I need to lock myself in somewhere where there's no sound, to get it correct.
What is it about this pattern that's causing this?
I think it's too easy. I don't know. You know how when something's too easy, you get going and it's like, yeah, I can do that, blah, blah, blah. A couple things about this pattern. It has you do a lifted increase. I would not do that. It's a left lifted increase. I would not do it on this particular pattern. People have been doing it and they don't like the little bulge or bump that it makes. So I have been doing just a make one left all the way around. So I'm going to have to go back and count again, yet again. So I'm just having one of those weeks where nothing works. And I'd like to throw it away, but I'm not going to. I'm determined. I'm going to get this right, and I'm going to make a nicely knit, because I like it. I love the yarn. I'm using the Barocco Iris, which I love, and I don't think this is what I've ripped out. So if some of you get frustrated, you're not alone. So the iris is cotton, bamboo, merino, and yak. And it's just a lovely, lovely yarn. Comes in beautiful colors too. So don't despair, you're not alone with that. So then, in my week of tragedies, first world problems, I was knitting with the Barocco modern linen, which I love. I really love this. Well, I chose a stupid pattern. It was like a vest kind of thing. And as Robin's mouthing, it was ugly. Well, it was ugly. And then I thought, what do I really want with this yarn? What I really want is a boat neck 3/4 length sweater. That Robin says it's her idea. I think she was right. And that's what I would get wear out of. Well, I was making this thing, and I probably showed it. And as I started looking at it, I thought, I'm not going to wear that. What's wrong with you? And I just don't know. So something bad was in the air last week. So I also made a mistake on my Alpine Bloom, which I was happily working on and going along. And I have to go back and rip that somehow I got off slightly on the pattern. And when I started to look at it, I thought, I don't know what you did. But again, I think I get going too quickly. I think that's what my knitting problem can be. And then I make a mistake. Because I'm not the world's fastest knitter, but so somewhere in here I have the incorrect count, which is fine. I'll just go back and do it. I would advise when you're doing color work like this that you make sure that your floats are nice and big on the back. And so what I often do if I'm knitting, if I knit along here, and I have, like, there's longer floats, not on here, where are the floats? Well, you can see some of them where there's a longer float. I tend to, after I've done that and brought the yarn across the back, I tend to give it a little tug to straighten it out so that, like, this all looks very wrinkled, but once I block it, it will block out flat. You can see how it is. So I guess I'm saying this just because we all make mistakes. Nothing's perfect. Sometimes you can live with mistakes, but on the projects, these two projects that I'm doing, the counts have to be right or it isn't going to look right. The sleeves will be different. I don't know what will go on, so I have to get it correct. And it's better to rip and get it correct and just start again. And you know, is it process or is it product in the end? For me, it's both. I like to be knitting, and I've kind of gotten over the fact that I don't like to rip out because I don't want to start over. Well, so what? So start over. Get something that you want and are going to like, and don't knit way down and then discover, I don't like this, which is what I was doing with this.
In 2 months, you'll forget about it.
Yes, in 2 months you will forget about it. It will not be a big deal. And again, knitting is, we knit for a reason. Some of us knit just for the solace of knitting and the wonderful meditative movements there are in knitting, and how you can knit and be off in another world, and where it just relaxes you, because we all know, well, not all of us, but a lot of us are stressed these days and over a variety of things. So knitting for me gives me a lot of, and I've always been somebody who likes to do stuff with my hands. I always has since I was a young child. So I've painted, I was a potter, and now a knitter. And so I love the process of knitting. I do love the finished product. Just as we're talking about finished products, this is a sweater that I attended, and you've heard this story before, I'm sure. I attended a workshop with Johi Locatelli and Vera Valmaki, and it was on designing sweaters that fit, or making sweaters that fit. So this was from that workshop, and it's a Malabrigo fingering with an alpaca. It's a Suri alpaca. Thank you. The word was escaping me. With a Suri alpaca, and it makes the softest thing you could imagine. And this was just from the workshop. It's a simple raglan sweater, cardigan, which was a lot of fun to make. And sometimes this was one I remember making very quickly, and I can't tell you why it went so fast, but it sure did. Maybe because it was just a lot of plain knitting, no fussiness. This was easy. I picked up afterwards and added this band all the way around, and that's all there was to it. Not much, but it's a delight to wear. So if you come across Surrey alpaca, we have some in the shop. It's great to add to anything to make something just super, super soft. I don't think I have much else to say other than, carry on. If you get discouraged, put your knitting down. That's what I did for night. Plus, I also have, I guess it's tendonitis in my thumb. And I think it started from way back when I was doing some crochet, and it just never, it's never healed. And I put CBD cream on it. Sometimes that helps. I massage it a lot, or I just take some time off. Robin said, do I do stretching? That's an idea.
I do it, and it helps a lot.
Yeah, and somebody told me also to take a ball, which I could take a ball of yarn. I'm really going off on a tangent, I apologize. And you can roll your hand around on a rubber ball, not a ball of yarn, but something that will. So like last night I was going to sit down and knit, and I thought, give your thumb a rest, just give it a rest. So sometimes if your knitting frustrates you, give it a rest. Put it down, do something else, pick up another project.
Read a book.
And read a book. Oh my gosh, a lot of us listen to books on tape when we're knitting, which is a fun thing to do. You get two things done at once, which is really great. I had a friend who used to read and knit.
I've tried that.
Reading a book and knitting, and she had some kind of stand, and she could somehow did it, but that's not my
with 300 more stitches.
Yeah, it's not a good one for me. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say. This is, spring is arriving, and there are daffodils all over the place. It's time to plan some spring projects. There are lots of wonderful teas and tanks to do, and we have a ton of spring yarns in the shop. We really have a lot of stuff.
I'll put in a link to last week where you showed them
Okay, Robin, I'll put in a link
in the notes.
to last week's podcast where we showed them. I wanted to show you what Robin's doing. She's doing the Traveler hoodie from Andrea Mowry, and she's doing, and this required some finagling with the was it the sizing, the needle, whatever?
Well, interestingly, Andrea says it grows in length. So what you do under the arms, you knit it from the bottom up, and you multiply your intended length by 0.83 to figure out how
it's gonna
much you
need to do.
If you want to change,
because
her
it's gonna,
original
if you see this ribbing is bunched up like this, well, as you wear it, it's gonna go like that. So you have to account for it. She's doing this in the North Bay Fibers Elemental Sport, and boy, is that a nice yarn. Oh, that's what I'm doing. I know why I like it. I'm using it too, but this is very squishy in this this pattern. It ends up with a hood on it. A lot of people have done it. I think Giovanna's done maybe 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken. And Agnes has done one. You can show. Do you want to show Agnes's?
I'll show it on the side.
She'll sew it on the side. Okay. I think that's enough of me for today. As I don't have anything really important to say. But again, do some spring knitting. It's awfully fun, or an awful lot of fun. Plus, you can make tanks or tees, and you don't have to do long sleeves. It's really fun. I did a top, and I've shown it before. I talked about it, the Sabai, I think I talked about last week, which is just a worsted weight cotton, which I love, and it's sleeveless, and sometimes I wear it with a sweater or a shawl or something, but boy, it knits up fast, and it's a great looking piece. Robin says she's going to make one. Anyway,
Zooey.
and have a great week of knitting, and we'll see you next time. Bye.